As I Lay Dying is a novel that William Faulkner wrote in 1930. It tells the story of how the Bondren family experiences the death of Addie. Addie's husband, sons and daughter all set off to fulfill the promise of burying her in Jefferson, Mississippi, next to her kins. There is no designated narrator. 15 characters take turns to narrate the events. There are times when the same event is described differently by different characters. This narration technique continuously invites the reader to be active, to make meaning, and to decide which account resonates the best with him. The story goes like this. Addie Bondren, the wife of Ansi and the mother of Kash, Dal, Jule, Duidel, and the little boy vardman, is bedridden. She is very ill, and her family expects her to die at any moment. The Bondren family is economically struggling, and each member experiences Addie's last moments differently. Kash, who is a skilled carpenter, is already making his mother's coffin. Addie can see him working on a coffin through the window in her bedroom. Dal and Jule miss their mother's last moments because they can't afford to turn down running a delivery for their wealthy neighbour Vernon Toll. Their mother dies while they're away. The Tolls appear to be neighbourly. Mrs. Toll and her daughters spend a lot of time at the Bondrens taking care of Addie to the best of their capacities. As expected, Addie dies, and Kash manages to ready a coffin just on time. Duidel starts to cry when her mother breathes her last, but Duidel is more pained by her own secret problem. The teenage girl was involved in an affair with a young man named Leif, and she got pregnant. Nobody knows about her out-of-wedlock pregnancy except her brother Dal, who hasn't told anybody. This situation is torturing her. This shows that life is more frightening than death, because Duidel is more frightened by the idea of giving birth to a baby while she's not married, and her fear of being a mother without a husband is greater than her fear or her sadness for the death of her mother. The person who struggles the most to understand death is vardman the kid. He likens his mother's death to a fish he has caught earlier. The fish was moving and alive, and then death turned it to be still. Hence, vardman produces the iconic statement, "My mother is a fish." Vardman associates death with a touchable agent that causes it. That is why vardman holds the doctor, his mother's doctor, to be responsible for her death, and he lashes out at the doctor's horse because he sees the horse as an extension of the doctor. Vardman is also perplexed by knowing that his mother is contained inside a wooden coffin, and in the middle of the night he tiptoes to where the coffin is and carves holes in it, but his understandable lack of dexterity causes him to go a little too deep, and he perforates his mother's face. On their way back home, Dal tells Jule that their mother has just died. Dal goes so far as to describe Addie's death, although he hasn't witnessed it, which cements his status as Faulkner's surrogate narrator. Dal's language is very sophisticated for a southern farmer. He is the only person in the family who knows about Duidel's affair, and he even suspects Jule is not his biological brother. Dal also predicts that Addie will die while he'll be away, and this is what happens. Jule remains unresponsive to what Dal tells him about the death of Addie. Jule is Addie's favourite son. He is presented as a man of action rather than of words. He's the most distant member of the family. As soon as they get home, Dal gets in, and he hears voices in the hallway, voices he cannot distinguish. It is as if Faulkner is breaking the fourth wall by drawing a parallel between the voices Dal hears and the different voices that take turns to narrate the novel. The Bondrens are poor, but before her death, Addie had her husband Ansi promise that she will be buried in Jefferson, Mississippi. The whole family mobilizes to grant her this wish. Addie's husband and children take a coffin and embark on a journey to get to Jefferson. One of the main themes in the novel is the contrast between what appears and what is. The novel tries to say that there is no objective reality. This is one of the reasons why there are many narrators. There are as many perspectives as narratives. In appearance, the family embarks on a heroic quest to bury Addie in Jefferson. But we gradually discover that it is not a classical selfless heroic quest. The members of the Bondren family are driven by their own self-centered interests. Ansi wants to get a set of prosthetic teeth. Duidel has one thing in mind: to rid herself of her unwanted pregnancy. Her lover gave her $10 and she'll try every pharmacy through her journey to buy abortion-causing medicine. The little boy Vardman wants to get a toy train, and Cash has been saving money to buy a gramophone that he thinks might find in Jefferson. Even Cora Toll's caretaking of Addie while she was bedridden was not purely humane. The whole time she was taking care of Addie, Cora was thinking of how uncivil it is of a customer to place an order of a cake and then cancel the order. Heavy precipitations damage the bridge that leads out of the town. The Bondrens decide to cross the river, but this proves too hard a task. The wagon doesn't hold, the coffin slips, and the mules are taken by the tide. Vernon Toll runs to the rescue. The wagon and the coffin are barely salvaged. The crossing of the river has elements of the biblical story of Moses and how he managed to cross the sea by parting it, while the Pharaoh and his armies drowned and their chariots were destroyed by water. The family's attempt to cross the river would assess the purity of their hearts and the authenticity of their mission. It would show them whether they're God's chosen righteous people or a handful of sinners. Eventually, the wagon doesn't hold, the mules drown, and their attempt to cross is dashed. Then Addie starts to narrate. It is not clear whether she's talking after her death and that her consciousness did not extinguish when her body died, or that it is a flashback to while she was bedridden and still alive, but she goes through her life. She describes how she felt about giving birth to every child of hers. Birth giving felt like an obligation. Her firstborn Cash marked the beginning of the invasion of her privacy. She enjoyed having time for herself while she was childless, and her children eroded this privacy. She was involved in an extramarital relationship with Minister Whitfield, who is the biological father of Jewel, Addie's favourite son. Her extramarital affair allowed her to rebel against her painful marriage, and Jewel is the materialization of her rebellion. The river accident re-injures Cash's leg, and the only medical attention he could get is that of a veterinarian who patches him up. The family's mules were taken by the river. To buy new ones, Ansi uses every resource. He sells Cash's horse, he adds the money he was saving to get prosthetic teeth, and he mortgages the appliances he uses for farming. New mules, a repaired wagon, a serious leg injury, and a severe cut in the family's meagre means permits the Bondrens to resume their adventure. They reach a town where they decide to rest for a bit. There's a bad odour that comes out of their wagon and that horrifies people. Duidel still has one thing in her mind: her pregnancy and the quagmire it could put her in if discovered. She runs to a pharmacy to buy drugs that could rid her of her pregnancy, but the pharmacist sermons her and denies her such drugs. Cash's leg needs to be plastered, but it can't due to the lack of means. Instead, the family can afford to buy cheap cement that Dahl uses to treat his brother's leg, but that doesn't work at all. The family is invited to spend the night at the farm of a local man named Gillespie. Then Dahl comes up with a plan to put an end to what he thinks is a useless journey that only drains efforts and means. He decides to set the barn on fire, hoping that the fire would consume the coffin and Addie's corpse. The family wakes up to the smell of smoke and Joel dashes into the barn. He manages to save the animals and he drags Addie's coffin to safety. Dal then bursts into tears on his mother's coffin in what appears to be regret over what he has done. To avoid reprisals on the burning of the barn, the family claims that Dal has lost his mind, and he is taken to a mental institution. Eventually, the Bondurans manage to get to Jefferson and to bury Addie there. Dewey still has the same thing in her mind. She wants to undo her pregnancy, and she tries the pharmacy in Jefferson. But it is still hard to buy abortion-causing medicine. But this time, the man who works at the pharmacy swindles her into having sex with him in exchange of abortion-causing drugs. But the medicine he gives her doesn't cause any abortion. Ansi uses Dewey's $10 to buy a new set of prosthetic teeth, and he also manages to find a new wife whose acquaintance he makes while he has been looking for shovels to bury his dead wife. The Bonduran family is made of individuals, and all those individuals except Ansi, the father, who gets a new set of prosthetic teeth and a new wife, all the other individuals suffer by being members of the family. Cash loses his tools and, more importantly, sustains a wicked injury in his leg, an injury that is not tended to the point that it starts to smell in the same way Addie's corpse does. Joel loses his horse. Dewey fails to undo her pregnancy, and she even reluctantly gives away her $10 to Ansi. The Bondurans are burdens on each other's shoulders, and it is the coffin that symbolizes this burden that's the Bondurans' pain to lift and that keeps swinging. Religion is another important theme in the novel. Cash is evocative of Christ. Cash is a carpenter, and he sacrifices his bodily integrity for the success of the quest. Cash hurts his leg and he doesn't get any proper medical attention. Cash also doesn't complain against the cement-made cast, and he loses consciousness from the pain in a symbolic death. The family's crossing of the river is reminiscent of Moses' crossing of the sea, and Addie's unfaithfulness with her lover, Minister Whitfield, is approached differently by Addie herself and by Minister Whitfield. Addie knows what she's doing and she accepts it. She thinks that her extramarital relationship is how she gets back at her miserable marriage. Life has wronged her, and her affair is how she rebels against it. Minister Whitfield, however, is dishonest with himself. He hates being in an extramarital relationship, and he dithers about whether to confess everything to Ansi and ask for his forgiveness or not, and when he finally decides to confess everything, Addie dies, and he thinks of Addie's death as a gift from God and a token that God has forgiven him. Family and religion are heavily castigated in the novel. The novel demands that those two institutions be revised. This is As I Lay Dying. It is a wonderful novel. I think it was made into a movie, I'm not sure, but I doubt that a movie would be able to capture all the complexity of the novel. But I know that there is a show that has strong As I Lay Dying vibes, and it is 6 Feet Under. It's a great show that I watched and liked. Now this video has reached its end. Until we meet again, have a great day.